To make a very long story short, my friend has a sister with some mental issues that I'm not privy to. She got pregnant a little over a year ago and claimed I was the father. I knew this was BS because A, I've never hugged her, let alone had intimacy with her, and B, at the time she would have gotten pregnant, she was staying at a friend's place for a month. She refused a prenatal paternity test, so I was clear I wasn't signing anything or having anything to do with the kid. My parents found out and it got ugly. They said they never raised me to be a deadbeat, said I couldn't drop the ball. Lots of very nasty comments from all three of us, I admit. Finally, when she was about 6 months along, they said they couldn't keep me in their lives if I was trying to skip out on being a dad, and they disowned me. My mom was there when she gave birth, and not long after, a paternity test showed it wasn't mine. My parents had been blowing up my phone, apologizing, offering money, and anything to get me to forgive them. I kept some money they sent me, a few hundred, and said that if they were willing to disown me over that, I would not open myself up to another risk. Most of my friends support me, but a few others, as well as my therapist, said I should give them another chance. Not the idiot. They failed as parents and took the word of a random over the word of their son. If you do end up giving them another chance, make sure they know how badly they screwed up. They showed you who they are. Believe them. They're not on your side and don't deserve another chance. Not to mention, your mom was at the birth? Boy, your parents seem to want this to be true. I think that's precisely what it is. Otherwise, why wouldn't you just wait 3 months to do the DNA test OP is adamant that he's willing to take and decide from there? Why else would you behave so irrationally about this? In my experience, some people act really batcrap crazy and unreasonable about becoming grandparents. Usually it's people who are trying to fill some void from the guilt of how they raised their own kids. I bet money OP's an only child, and now the parents are realizing that they aren't going to get to become grandparents unless OP forgives them. Life is not a romantic film. It's not always the case that an apology fixes everything. Dude, the only person in your shoes is you, nobody else. Therapist, family members, friends, nobody gets to tell you that you should forgive your parents or have contact with them. Get a new therapist ASAP. No professional would tell someone to ignore their boundary in this situation. Not only that, but I would also consider reporting them. It's highly unprofessional and unethical, and who knows how many people might have been harmed by their advice. It's never the role of the therapist to tell you what to do, and this kind of behavior may put many people at risk, especially if someone is a victim. Just a note, when I was 16, my parents gave me a disowning as my 16th birthday present. It came in a nice card and everything. Opened it up and it read, "You're dead to us," and had some accusatory stuff because they didn't like my dad. It was wild. My kid brain didn't understand it, but I reacted in a way they didn't expect. Sort of like you, OP. I wrote them a letter back and said, "Okay, I will respect your disowning of me. I am now dead to you. I understand, but I'm holding you to it. You want me out of your life? Okay, I'm out forever. Don't come back. You did this, so stick to it." Of course, they didn't stick to it. They came back just like your parents. They didn't even have the decency to admit a mistake, though. They just sent me a crate of presents and expected to buy their way back in. No apology needed. I rejected the box of gifts. Most of my family's freaked out about this, too. All the people who are making you feel bad about this, they don't know your heart. They'll tell you that you'll regret it, but you won't. Importantly, it's been 35 years since they disowned me, and I've never regretted it. My younger brother, 22, developed a neurological disorder in his teens. When he was old enough, he became my responsibility. He seems just like everyone else, but he needs supervision, and it would be tough for him to live alone. My husband knew this when we started dating. I have told him a billion times, my brother will always be my priority. He understood. My husband and brother's relationship has been decent. My brother doesn't care for him much, and my husband treats him kindly, Like I said, he was pretty understanding. Things started to change a couple of months ago. He's not mean, but he's become distant. I asked him if everything was all right, and he asked me if my brother would ever move out. I told him the truth. Most likely no. Of course, we don't know what the future may hold, but my brother still needs me now. My husband didn't push it. The other day, my husband came home with a few of his coworkers. I was given no warning. I tried calling my brother so he wouldn't be overwhelmed when he came home from his job, but his phone was dead. So when he did come home, he was extremely overwhelmed and I had to take him for a walk. My husband called me several times while we were out on this walk, but I didn't answer. I was a little annoyed, but mostly I was busy with my brother. We went home eventually, and his coworkers had left, thankfully. I was gonna let it go, but my husband yelled at me for embarrassing him in front of his coworkers. I asked him what he meant by that, and he explained that I had a bad attitude with everyone and was very unfriendly. He said I didn't act like his wife, and one of his coworkers made fun of my husband for marrying a poor excuse of a woman. I told him to snap out of it, and he should know better. My husband rolled his eyes and told me I only have my brother in my head and that he's just a second thought. He then called my brother the R slur. This made me extremely angry, so I told him there was no use getting mad at me. He married me, knowing that he'll always be second. He called me insufferable before leaving. Now he's with his mom now, and she's yelled at me for coddling my brother and neglecting my husband. I'm curious and need to let off steam. Am I the idiot? Just in case anyone gets the wrong idea, my husband isn't involved in my brother's care at all, not even financially. I wouldn't put that burden on him. He did go to a few therapy sessions just to understand my brother's disability, but that's it. One parent is deceased. The other is the cause of my brother's problems. The relative who took him in was going to leave him homeless. He has no one else but me. I do have a normal life with normal relationships. I just have extra responsibilities. I have a job, friends, hobbies. I don't have the most time, but that was pretty much expected. No, you're not fooling anyone into thinking you have a normal life with normal relationships. Everyone's the idiot here. You shouldn't have gotten married. You are not marryable. Your husband shouldn't have married you knowing this, and vice versa. Also, your brother's functional enough to work outside the house, but can't even try independence? Do you ever plan to have children? If so, what priorities will shift? Your marriage seems at an impasse, and your husband has an idiotic reaction to the situation, but this seems like a last straw moment. My main question is, do you love your husband, or is he just a side character in your life? It's great that you love and care for your brother, but I don't blame your husband for being upset. You told him he'll always be number 2, but maybe he wants to be number 1, occasionally. What happens if you have children? Are you going to sacrifice your entire life for your brother? Your brother can work independently, but not live independently? What'll happen if you pass before him or get sick? Do you never go on holiday? Do you see children in your future? But most importantly, does your brother really need you? Or have you created an unnecessary codependency that actually hampers his chance at independence? OP, you need to prioritize yourself too. Your life matters too. I, male 38, met my wife 36, 10 years ago when she was a widow with a toddler son. We got married 7 years ago and have a young grammar school-age daughter together. I love my wife and daughter, but I don't feel the same about my stepson, tween. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate or mistreat him. I just don't see him as my son. I am actively involved in his life. I pay for his school, take him to his activities, play with him, and help him when needed. But I don't feel that the connection between us is that of a father and a son. He's more like a nephew than a son to me. My wife knows this and she's unhappy about it. She says he already sees me as a father. What got to me was when she suggested that I legally adopt him and call him my son. She says I'm creating a difference between him and my daughter, which I consider untrue since I try to avoid favoritism. I've suffered from this myself. My parents preferred my younger brother, and I won't make that mistake with him. I'm doing my best to be a good stepfather, but I can't force a feeling that doesn't exist. I don't want to legally adopt him because I don't want to take on a heavy responsibility that isn't mine. I don't want to call him my son because I don't want to lie to him or myself. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. I suggest you talk to a therapist about why you can't feel a connection with the kid you raised. You've been in this kid's life and been his father for a decade, which at this point is the overall majority of it. Not acknowledging him as your son is a major rejection. If you can't figure out the root of the issue, you're going to push him away as he gets older because he'll feel that rejection. I think the root of this problem is only my genetically related children are my actual children. All others I tolerate. So if your wife were to pass away, would you still care for this boy who currently lives with you? No? What is heavy responsibility? He's living with you, and you're paying for things for him. Unless your wife is the one paying extra bills for him, this doesn't make sense. You're showing favoritism, and I bet the poor boy knows you treat him differently than your biological child. I don't want to call him son because I don't want to lie to him or myself. OP says this a few sentences after saying he avoids favoritism. This poor kid. My heart breaks for him having such a terrible guy as the only father figure he's ever known. Look, you shouldn't adopt him if you're not feeling it. But also, don't be surprised if your wife divorces you over this. My husband and I had a sister and her family staying with us for a month while repairs were carried out on their house. Sister-in-law has 3 kids, a kindergartner, a pre-tween, and a tween. My husband and I have 2 kids, a pre-tween and a preschooler. My sister-in-law and I work from home, so we were both home all day when they stayed with us. So here's what happened. She asked if I could cook for all the kids versus each of us cooking for our respective kids. I told her sure, but explained to her how my kids eat and wanted to know whether she wanted them on the same schedule or whether she wanted a typical 3-meal deal. She said to feed them 3 meals. For context on how I feed my kids, we do smaller meal sizes but eat more often. So pre-meal snacks are big in our family. Seconds are also a thing if we have a hungry day. I also try to mix in a lot of different choices week to week so food is still enjoyable. I know her kids' likes and dislikes with food, so I considered those when making food. But the kids didn't want to eat the stuff I was making. They were upset if it wasn't pizza or burgers, or they were upset about tacos I made at home versus takeout ones. The kids dug in their heels and said that I needed to give them the food they wanted. I told sister-in-law, and she would go feed them. Then she'd get mad that I hadn't given them the food they wanted. I asked her if she wanted to take over feeding her kids, and she said no. It got to the point where the kids stopped coming to the table at meal times. Since sister-in-law was aware of this, I just let it go because I felt like she'd make them come to the table if she was upset by them not eating much. They were in the office with her sometimes when we were eating. The day they were going back home, she turned to me and told me I should be ashamed of myself for letting her kids go without food. My husband told her she was here the whole time and should have done more. He also pointed out we did them a favor, and she was acting very ungrateful. A couple of weeks later, she sent me a text saying yet again, I should be ashamed, and how could I refuse to accommodate children? I told sister-in-law it wasn't my job to make her kids eat, and that I had communicated with her while this was going on, but she ignored me and expected me to bend over backward for them. She accused me of cruelty to kids and told me I was an idiot for thinking it wasn't my job to make sure children under my roof were eating enough. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. You did make them meals, but the kids didn't eat because they wanted fast food. What more can you do? Your sister-in-law's job is to feed them if they don't eat. You are not her kid's restaurant worker. Next time she can go mooch off another family member. Living rent-free, making 0 effort to contribute, and still demanding what the host should feed her kids? Girl, bye. She wanted a vacation from cooking for her kids, but criticized you when it wasn't working, and refused to step in. Your sister-in-law is one of those, give her an inch, and she'll scream at you because you didn't also hand over the next 10 miles without complaining. She's the idiot here. She's not appreciative that she was able to stay at your house rent-free instead of at an Airbnb or hotel, where she would have had to figure out meals for her kids. Choosy beggars are the worst. Oh well, you know not to bother doing them a favor again. I've been married to my wife for 5 months, living together for almost a year before marriage. My stepdaughter, Ann, teen, used to split time between our parents, but is currently with us full-time, as her father will be overseas until August. I also have a son, Leo, nearly adult, who lives mostly with my ex-wife and with me on the weekends. The kids go to different schools and have a decent relationship. My wife and Ann are great cooks. My wife's parents come from another country, and she and Ann regularly make exotic dishes from their homeland, which are delicious. My son and I appreciate the dishes, though we still have problems learning what's what. A few days ago, Leo stopped by for something he had left. Nobody was home, so he let himself in. Leo said that there was a big pot of stew on the stove, and it smelled delicious, and he asked if he could have some. My wife or Ann often made a huge batch of food when they cooked, so it was nothing surprising. I told Leo to go ahead and just leave some for us. Now, Leo's a wrestler, and he eats a lot. A while later, he sent me a photo showing me how much stew was left in the pot. I could tell there were at least 5 servings left, so I thought nothing of it. An hour later, Ann called me upset. She asked if I had eaten the stew she made. It was a special recipe from her grandma, and she invited her friends over to try it. She said the stew was supposed to feed 9 people, and she invited 6 friends, but someone obviously had eaten almost half of her stew. I told her it was Leo and apologized, telling her she could order pizza for her friends and I would pay for it. Ann said it was poor compensation for her friends looking forward to her stew, which she spent hours preparing, but she did take my offer. When I later apologized and had Leo call to apologize, she said she accepted our apologies, though she's been relatively quiet around me. My wife later told me I should not just allow Leo to eat whatever he wants in our kitchen, as sometimes she and Ann have plans for their dishes. I think it's utterly ridiculous that Leo's not allowed to eat things from his own father's kitchen, and if my wife or Ann has a special plan for their food, they should put a note on it. Otherwise, things in the kitchen should be up for grabs, as the kitchen is a communal space for food, and I pay for most of the groceries. I think if Leo's not allowed to have the food, then it's like he's not a part of the family. I am willing to talk to him about portion control, but other than that, I think he should be able to eat what he wants in the kitchen, unless there's a note saying not to. Am I the idiot? Was putting a note on it a previous rule, or did you make that up to excuse your rudeness? Do you do the meal plan for each week, deciding what to cook and how much to buy to serve all? Do you do all the grocery shopping? Do you cook every meal? Did you cook this one? Did you replace the ingredients so she can make it again, or ask what she wants to make next time? He took half a pot of food that you thought was meant for 3 people staying there and turned out to be 9 portions worth. That's simply inconsiderate. You are the idiot, and you and your son have no manners. Prepared food that is still cooking is not up for grabs before the meal. Of course, since you rarely cook, you don't appreciate their effort. It's unbelievably rude just to declare a dish for everyone. I can't imagine cooking a dish for friends and a family member just assuming that they can eat half. It's not how it works. I'm leaving the son out of it because he asked, which is the correct thing to do. You would assume your father would know whose food it is and not just assume. I think it's the dad who needs to cook more. Yeah, the dude knew his son had a wrestler's appetite. He could have ordered a large pizza for his son instead of ruining his stepdaughter's dinner party plans. This reeks of good old-fashioned male chauvinism with the side of weaponized incompetence.